Well, good evening, and thank you, Katie Jarrett, for the music. We appreciate you playing for us tonight. She is the Forney High School Choir Company. Let's give her a round of applause. I'm Greg Ferris, President of the Forney ISD Board of Trustees, and I hereby call this Board of Trustees meeting to order and certify a quorum as president that the meeting has been posted in time and manner required by law. The monthly meetings are open to the public. Although these meetings are public, comments and questions from the audience will be confined to the time designated for citizens to address the board. At this time, we'll move on to our introductions and our invocation. This evening, we have with us Robert Wetzel. Mr. Wetzel serves as the youth pastor over at Trinity Family Church of Forney. Rob spent 8 years in the Marine Corps and recently celebrated his 15 years of marriage to Stacy, who is a Forney ISD teacher. They are blessed to have 3 children. He's also a member of Watchdogs, Dads for Great Students for Forney ISD, and has helped with various projects at Warren Middle School, I think at both middle schools. He also participates as a character coach for FCA. For the past 2 years, Trinity Family Church has been a participating partner with Brown Middle School on the first day of school. We look forward to him coming and sharing with us tonight, and thank you for your service to both middle schools, you and your ministry through the church. At this time, would you please rise for the invocation?
First of all, I would like to thank all of you for your sacrifices and your dedication to equipping and advancing our next generation. It's a noble and it's often a selfless task, and it goes thankless many times. I want you to know that it's appreciated even when it's
You may be seated. Moving on to item B, our pledges this evening. First, I'd like to welcome Holly Thomas, who is an assistant principal at Forney High School, and she'll introduce our secondary student of the month. And then after that, we'll have Mrs. Parker, who is principal at Blackburn Elementary, will introduce our elementary student of the month. Go ahead.
Oh, look at that. Good evening, I'm Holly Thomas. I'm the assistant principal over at Forney High School, and it's my pleasure to introduce Miguel Monroy as our student of the month, our secondary student of the month. Miguel is a senior at Forney High School. When we ask teachers about Miguel, they report that he is a leader and has a willingness to serve, and he exemplifies a strong work ethic and is always going above and beyond the call. Miguel is a part of our dual credit program. In May, Miguel will finish his associate's degree before graduating at the end of May, so we're very proud of him. Miguel has already been accepted to Stephen F. Austin with plans to study horticulture. He's very interested in being an entrepreneur, looking into cryptocurrency and real estate. Miguel's favorite class at Forney High School is financial math with Ms. Burleson, saying that it is one of the most beneficial courses he has taken to date at Forney High School. Yes. He says it's a great class. Miguel also works outside of school to help support his family. One of Miguel's quotes is, "I will let my success speak for me." Congratulations, Miguel Monroy. Thank you.
Good evening, School Board and Dr. Terry. Blackburn is proud to introduce Shapani Gaines, who exemplifies the qualities and characteristics of what it is to be nominated for Blackburn Elementary Student of the Month. Shapani is a 4th grade student at Blackburn that lives with her mother, Brittany Lester, her 2 sisters, Sanaya Pratt, who is a 5th grade student at Smith, and then we have at Blackburn with us, we have her siblings Sincere Gaines in 3rd grade and her brother Chaz in 1st grade. As a proud bulldog, she shows respect to her peers and is in turn liked and respected by everyone. Shapani often volunteers to give up her recess to help in the cafeteria after lunch by cleaning the tables and assisting teachers with cafeteria duties. Teachers on duty say that she is a valued asset to our school. Shapani's teachers describe her as an extremely hard worker. She frequently seeks out math tutorials to ensure her success in school and states that math is her favorite subject after her recent mastery of multiplication skills. Her teachers go on to say that she is extremely conscientious about doing the right thing all the time, no matter what everyone else is doing. She's always the first student to follow directions and never has to be told twice. Shapani enjoys earning Bulldog Bucks from her teachers and recently earned 50 Bulldog Bucks for doing her best in class and showing perseverance. Shapani says she also enjoys curling up with her Junie B. Jones books. When at home, Shapani loves to teach herself gymnastics, cheerleading, and the latest dance moves by watching TikTok videos with her friends. Shapani describes herself as brave and desires to become a police officer one day so that she can help keep everyone safe. Having such a dedicated, wonderful student like Shapani is a tremendous blessing. She consistently makes good choices, displays excellent behavior, and her teachers know they can depend on her to be a role model for other students. Shapani is a wonderful young lady, a dedicated student, and an awesome role model that we are so fortunate to have at Blackburn. Congratulations.
Would you please rise for our pledges?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Please grab him. You can't get away without a picture. That's what we do, is take photos of board meetings. Come on in. Thank you all for taking time to come out and join us tonight for that. Moving on then to recognitions. We have some student recognitions, and at this time, Ms. Kristen Zestapul will make introductions.
Good evening. We have a short little video. This is not the first time we've had a holiday card contest, but it is the first time in many, many years. And so we are really excited tonight to revive a tradition that we hope to carry into the future. A big thank you to Dana Curry and Mario Luna and all of our art teachers in the district who really worked hard to put this together. So I'm going to show you a little video with our winners, and then we're going to invite them up to be recognized. with these four, we had a winner in each category, and then we had an overall winner, and we let administrators up here vote. We did a blind vote to come up with these winners, and we are so excited. Their families are here with them tonight, so they're going to be receiving their original work on the front of the frame, and on the back is actually a copy of the holiday card that's printed, and then the families each are receiving a set of 10 cards as well to take home. So our pre-K through 4th winner, Malachi Ottinger Crosby, 4th grade. Our 5th through 8th grade winner, Ava Maldonado from Brown Middle School in 8th grade. Our 9th through 12th grade winner, Hannah Reyes, North Forney High School, 11th grade. And our overall winner, Mark Noriega, North Forney High School, 9th grade. And if your families would like to join us for a picture, you're more than welcome. We also sent some copies of these with each of the principals, and we'll have some that we'll be sending out from Dr. Terry's office as well. So tomorrow, we'll be sharing out the video you just saw through our Facebook account, as well as kind of a digital Christmas card, so the families can go on and share that as well from the district social media pages.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item B is our 120th year anniversary resolution. Kristen, as our school, also has a recognition on this one.
So I am honored to introduce State Representative Keith Bell, who represents House District 4, encompassing Kaufman and Eastern Henderson counties. As you know, prior to being elected to the Texas House of Representatives last year, he served as a trustee of Forney ISD School Board for over 20 years and as a founding member of the Forney ISD Education Foundation. In addition to his service to Forney ISD, he founded Intex Electrical Contractors in 1983 and has served in numerous trade organizations. As a graduate of Dallas Baptist University with his wife, Annette, and he had been married for 34 years. They have 2 grown daughters, 4 grandchildren, and are members of First Baptist Church of Forney. We are so excited to have Representative Bell here, who is proud to act as a champion for our local public schools and bring us a special resolution tonight.
Well, I once again appreciate the opportunity to be here. Board President Ferris and the board members, Dr. Terry, it's great to be home. And it's quite an honor to do this. I understand your service. I understand what it takes to do that, and I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it. As a Forney resident, as having 5 grandkids coming up, 1 in the school district today, man, I'm telling you, we're in great hands. And congratulations on a great bond package. Overwhelming support. That is just a testament to your leadership. As a team of 8. So thank y'all for what y'all do. I appreciate it so much. Thanks, Ms. Dobbs, for taking up my spot. And so you've done an amazing job. So that's a 2 times rerun for you. So thank you for your commitment to our kids and this community. I appreciate that. So with that said, I did have a resolution drafted by Ledge Council. And if you'll oblige me, I'll read that and recognize the Forney ISD for your 120th anniversary. Whereas the Forney Independent School District is celebrating its 120th anniversary in 2019, and whereas the first educational institution in the community, the Brooklyn School, was established in 1869, and it became the Forney School in 1873 when the town changed its name. In 1899, the town built a new 5-room school on the location of the district's current administration building, and whereas in December of 1899, the people of Forney voted to withdraw from the county educational system and start their own independent school district, A two-story brick school was built in 1903, and a separate high school was established in 1922. A new high school was constructed in 1838, and whereas by 1995, the district encompassed several campuses accommodating different grade levels, and during the first decade of the 21st century, 9 new schools were built to serve the community's growing population. And whereas today, Forney ISD is home to nearly 12,000 students, and it consists of seven elementary schools, 2 intermediate schools, 2 middle schools, and 2 high schools, as well as a separate facility for pre-kindergarten and Head Start students. And whereas dedicated to promoting educational excellence, Forney ISD has provided countless young Texans with the knowledge and skills they need to build productive and fulfilling lives. Now therefore, be it resolved that the 120th anniversary of the Forney Independent School District be commemorated, and that all those associated with the district be extended sincere best wishes for continued success in their important work. From the state of Texas, and on affixed by my name, Keith Bell, State Representative, District 4. Congratulations. Thank y'all. Got a couple of these.
Okay.
Thank you. That's yours. Thank you. Thank you. No, man. You guys got it. Thank you. Oh, awesome.
Not nearly anymore. We're over the top.
Well, once again, I appreciate it. Thanks for allowing me to serve as your state representative. It was an honor to serve this district and to live in this community, and I appreciate you allowing me to serve as your state rep. So thank y'all again. Have a great meeting. This is the best part about being in this job. You guys get to stay, and I get to go home and eat supper. Thank you.
We're going to move on to item 6, reports. The next 5 items are reports only, require no action from the board. 6A is Gift and Talented Update. Dr. Judy Weber, Chief of Learner Services, will make a presentation.
School board members and Dr. Terry, it's always exciting to give you updates when we have good news to share. And we've made some noted strides in improving our programs for our gifted and talented and advanced academic students. So changes since 2016, we really started looking into some of our processes, and we streamlined the GT identification process and made some improvements. Recently, we've added an SEL component to our GT services, and then we now offer in-house the 30-hour foundation GT course, so our teachers don't have to leave and go to Region 10 or another district to take the 30-hour course. And with all this, we've also greatly increased in our identified students for GT. So I got a little graph to kind of show you. We've had a nice steady climb in enrollment in our district, but we wanted to show you that we're not increasing our GT students just because we're increasing our enrollment. We've increased them 92% in the last few years. You can really see once we changed our identification process, you see a really steep climb there from 2017 to 2018, and now we're back on track. So we currently have 531 identified GT students. Now, with the last legislative session, there were quite a few changes. I'll get to in a second. But one of the things is they're requiring our schools to use some coding to see how we're serving our students. So the state's even monitoring how we're serving our students by what type of program. And so they've also adjusted the language that we need to have in our handbooks. So we've adjusted our handbook processes. There's some kind of wording in the funding and how we fund our GT programs. And then there's a whole lot of state requirements that really are coming out just recently in update from TASB 114. And so we're looking at the updates to see how we need to change our manual. They've changed some of the wording, so it's not a kid's nominated. They've really gone to much more of the wording we use with our special education students, that students are referred and they're tested and identified. So we've really changed a lot of system related to what TASB's update. So what's coming in the future? So to improve our communication, we're going to have a GT informational night this January. We're also offering a little mini showcase in December, and then a much bigger showcase in May for our students who are in the GT program, so they can start demonstrating what they've learned and done through the TSPS program. So we're all going to have a referral night in August to communicate how kids are nominated, how the referral process goes for our families and community. We're also going to expand the Duke TIP program into 5th and 6th grade, so continually offering more opportunities as our kids move through the system. And then increasing the use of the Texas Performance Standards Project. And then we're really evaluating now expanding the offerings and the personnel we even have to support our campuses. And I think that's the most exciting change. When you have a lot more students, you need to look into, really Mel Harlan has been overseeing all of this and what kinds of support do our campuses need. So a lot coming in the future, a lot going on this year, and we're very excited to serve our students. So do you have any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Weber. Moving on to item B, demographer's update. Ms. Kim Horzak, Chief of Information, Innovative and Technology Service.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Board, I'm actually inviting Rocky Gardner up from Templeton Demographics. He just completed our Q3 report. As you'll recall, we moved to quarterly reports now with our demographer. So he's kind of looked at our new enrollments and snapshot and is going to give you guys an update.
Good evening, Board. Dr. Terry, it's a pleasure to be back in Forney. I think it's been a few months since I've been here, but congratulations on the bond passing, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm glad we're doing quarterly reports. Things are moving pretty quick in Forney, so it's kind of nice to be able to come out on a quarterly basis and try to keep up with it. Do I advance this? Yep, I do. Starting with just, we kind of changed things up a little bit from some of the reports you guys might have seen before. We're kind of starting with the end a little bit, and then we're going to walk through the forecast. Right now, we've got Forney positioned with growth at about 814 students. I think that 11,947, I believe, Kim told me tonight, you're over 12,000 now, correct? So we're over 12,000 students now in Forney ISD. So again, growth of just probably under 900 students once you got to the snapshot date. So strong growth continuing. We took a look at what we forecasted. We forecasted the district to be 11,955, so I'm really actually pretty comfortable with that forecast. We were pretty tight. Having you go over a little bit is actually right where we want to be. We'd rather be a little bit on the underside there. Your kindergarten class came in really high at 833, and that's always good to see because those large classes are going to move through the district and continue to show some growth there. We saw some really strong cohorts at 6th grade as well, which I think is important to understand when you're seeing some students, parents that are coming to the district for secondary education as well. And so I think we really saw some good movement this year, and we were pretty pleased with the forecast. The economy in Dallas-Fort Worth continues to buzz right along. Right now, the Texas Workforce Commission is showing about 115,000 new jobs generated in the last 12 months. That's likely to be adjusted down a little bit come the first of the year, but if it does, it'll just still be right at 100,000 jobs a year. So we're growing at more than twice the rate of the national economy, with unemployment rates well below 4%. We're looking at 3% in Kaufman County. Very strong unemployment rates. And right now we've probably topped out at about 33,000 home starts. That's about 1,200 fewer than a year ago, but what you're going to see moving forward is Forney has not participated in the slowdown, if you will, okay? We've kind of gone the other way. 1,260 annual starts in Forney, only 8 other school districts. Well, your closings are what we rank this report by, because a closing is an occupied home. 1,103 closings, only 8 other school districts closed more homes than Forney did in the last 12 months. And Forney's likely, if you see the starts, they have more starts than Little Elm and Louisville. So we're probably going to see begin to trend up that as some of these other districts slow down a little bit, but continued strong growth. You can see where the district housing overview, this is really, 22,000 future units. That's where all that yellow you see on there, that's where we have future inventory. We also have future inventory, of course, in some of the green areas, but the green areas also have active development going on right now. So we've got 2,200 lots available to be built on right now. So those are vacant developed lots. They'd be built on tomorrow. And so they can continue at the pace they are for another 18 months if they weren't delivering lots. Now, what they're doing, though, is delivering about another 4,400 lots, during the next 12 months. So we're continuing to develop lots. They're continuing to deliver them. Each builder has their own plan. We try to talk to builders as much as possible to kind of understand their growth, and I'll show some slides on that here in just a minute. Multifamily housing, of course, is a component that you're going to continue to see. Sorry about that. There are about 1,272 units that are under construction right now. We've got 118 are age restricted, and so they don't really impact enrollment, but we try to keep up with that as well. And about 500 future multifamily units that are in the planning stages. So you're looking at about 1,700 multifamily units that are going to be coming online within the next probably 24 months. Where is some of the development? Devonshire, and you guys know where this is. So our team goes in each quarter and takes a snapshot, and we're not going to show you a slide of every one of those, so you can relax on that. But Devonshire, 5,000 total lots. 399 of those are vacant developed lots. So we're just over about 60% occupied there in Devonshire. So we're still going to see strong growth. They're yielding about 0.56. So when we show those yields, it's just so you can understand that when it's yielding about 0.56, that's like 6 students for every 10 homes. So when you think about the other 2,000 homes that are left to be built, or I guess 1,500. You can kind of estimate, and you kind of do the quick math and realize that you're going to get another 800 students likely just out of Devonshire there at build-out. Again, Windmill Farms has been rolling right along in Forney ISD for a long time. 7,000 total lots. There's still another 2,600 lots that are going to get built. Their yield out there is over one student per home. This is one of the highest yielding single-family developments that we work with in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We typically, an average yield is below 0.5 right now in most areas. So the yields, you've got fast growth coming, and then you've also got some of the highest yields that we see in the area. And they continue to build, 184 vacant developed lots. They got to deliver lots to stay on pace, and that's kind of what we're watching. Overland growth, 1,074 total lots, 747 of those future. So it's just kind of getting going. There were 9 homes under construction. Again, that was at the end of the third quarter. So keep in mind this report is through the end of September. Okay, first residents are anticipated. There's probably persons living there right now in Overland Grove. The developer would like to build 50 to 100 homes per year there. Lakewood Trails is another one with lots being delivered right now. There's groundwork underway, and they'd like to do 50 to 100 homes a year. And of course, Bradley Farms, 2,500 future lots. This development agreement was approved in November, so they're hoping to have their first homes in the fall of 2021. So we got a couple years on that one, but you can see, again, over 2,500 lots. You'll likely have 1,200 students that are living down there within the next probably 5 to 7 years. So looking at, you can't really see, it looks like a blank there. Forecasted homes projected. Do you guys have a printed copy of this as well, or is that just showing up blank and on everybody's screen? Can you see that? It's showing blank? Well, I'm sorry. We're forecasting that there is going to be future housing in Forney ISD. Right now, you're doing about 1,000 homes a year. The developers and builders that we're talking to are all pretty optimistic. We have you peaking at around closer to 2,000 lots per year within 3 to 5 years. Now, that's going to be the challenge, whether or not they can all, at some point, all the developers, all the builders, they all want to build, 50 to 100 homes. They can all tell you that. At some point, there could be some cannibalism going on, where we don't hit that number and the economy could see a little bit of a hiccup. But the price point is pretty much perfect. The infrastructure has been approved quite a bit out here, so you guys are right in the middle of started to say perfect storm, but I don't know if you want to call it a storm or not, but it's, right now, you're in the sweet spot of the Metroplex. We're seeing that strength, and so I do think you could get to 1,500 to 2,000 homes a year, and that's actually what that slide says, if you get a printout of it. I think that these, see those, can you see that back there? There are lines there. I just want to prove that there really were lines. We really were forecasting. This chart here actually shows you what that 5-year change would look like by elementary zone. So most of your future, the next 5 years, the growth we're showing in the current Blackburn zone, followed by Crosby, of course, and Lewis. They all have significant numbers of homes. But then, you've got over 1,000 homes that are going to be built in four of your 5-year elementary zones in the next 5 years. So it's not just in one place, it's really throughout the district. And this is another good way to show it. The gray line, which actually showed up on this map, is where the new growth is going to be. So the blue is what are the existing homes, and the gray is what we're seeing in the next 5 years. So again, Crosby, Henderson, Johnson, Lewis, you see the big gray bars there. That's where the new growth is occurring. Thinking about yields, like I said, this 0.52 yield that you're at 4 years ago is now up to 0.57. That's overall yield. So you're trending towards about 0.6. I think you'll probably level out there at 0.6. Your single family yield is going to be right around that 0.26, and your multifamily yield. That's very normal. Your multifamily yields are pretty normal. Single family, not so normal. So just keep that in mind. We're not seeing an upward trend in yields in very many of our clients' districts. It's really because of the price points in some areas. The yields have been actually going the other way. So yield by active subdivision. Now, we just looked at your subdivisions with at least 50 homes occupied to give you an idea of what these yields look like in different places. So in the north in Lewis, the yields are a little bit lower. They're in that 0.5 to 0.75. Then you see the orange area, it's a very high yield, over 0.75, and again, Windmill Farms with the yields, over 1 student per home. And multifamily yields, we see trends we've got, that red there is actually a manufactured housing area, mobile home park, and we include those because they're on one parcel, so they're treated just like a multifamily. But you can see the yields there. Your multifamily yields are staying at 0.25 and above. Newcomer and leavers, this is a little bit different report. This is some different analysis. We're trying to understand how growth is happening, where growth is happening. And what we see is that you've got 1,689 newcomers this year. So these are students that we just simply use the student IDs. We have enough history with Forney ISD that we use the student ID that was in the system last year and if it was not in the system this year, then we consider those a leaver. If we had a student ID that is in the system this year but was not in the system last year, we consider those, of course, newcomers. So your newcomers are down slightly, and your leavers are up just a little bit. It's not a very big swing, and then that's not, so that 536 is the net difference, which gets close to where your growth is. It's never going to be perfect because we don't include 12th graders as leavers. We all expect for them to leave, of course. And we don't include kindergarten students as newcomers because they're all newcomers. And so the difference in that 12th and kindergarten kind of makes up the rest of your enrollment there. But understanding that's important to us, because at some point if there becomes a challenge or if we see some yields declining, we can take a look at that. So from an enrollment projection perspective, we're showing continued strong growth. Again, 800 to 900 students per year moving forward. It might become the new normal for Forney. It's going to be right around that 900 number. And even as your homes go up, if we start hitting that 1,500 number, your new enrollment might still stick right around 800 to 900 because the yields might be consistent, but in the existing developments, those yields are going to start coming down a little bit. I don't know that Windmill Farms will stay up at that 1 number, so we do see some moderating yields going forward, but we think the district will exceed 17,000 students in about 6 years and be at 20,000 students within 10 years. So that's more than doubling in about a 12-year period in Forney ISD. When you think that just 3 years ago you were at 10,000 students, so really impressive growth. We've also separated the growth out just by our high school feeders, and you know that right now the North Forney area is closing more homes than what you're seeing in Forney High School. But if you look at the vacant developed column there, they're both got about 30, it's almost 50-50. And those are where you have homes that are ready to be built on right now. So we are going to continue to see some strong growth in both high school patterns. And so this is separated out by growth. So the North Forney pattern, from an enrollment perspective, we're adding about 300 to almost 400 students per year. You know, the farther out you go, it's a little fuzzier, of course, but it's, you know, 400 students per year. What you'll notice is in the Forney feeder pattern, where there were fewer closings right now, they're going to grow a little bit faster, but keep in mind their base that they're growing from right now, there's 4 campuses feeding it. And so there's a little bit of, you know, there's some uneven stuff going forward that we're going to keep an eye on. But again, you're looking at, you know, you could peak at about 500 students a year in the Forney feeder going forward. So just with that, some key takeaways, and we think you're continuing to experience strong growth. Again, the housing market is strong in Forney ISD. It's attractive in Forney ISD with the school district successes. I think you're going to see that continued growth. 1,500 to as many as 2,000 single-family homes per year over the next 5 years. Again, you know, single-family homes is the largest driver of student growth in Forney ISD. And we think you'll add over 4,300 students in the next 5 years. And over 8,000 students in 10 years. So strong growth. It's a pleasure to be here. You want to take this?
Yeah, I'm going to take you to stay
I'm
here,
like, okay.
in case they have questions. Before I get to this, I do want to say, I want to thank Rocky, because with all the changes and the rezoning, all the movement, they did an excellent job helping us really go smoothly into the school year. We didn't move a single teacher this year, and that's incredible with the amount of movement we made with the changing of power. So they did an excellent job, and I want to thank him and his team for that. We did ask Rocky, I'm going to go back 2 slides real fast. If you'll look, Claiborne was one of the campuses that we did not add on to, as you'll recall. So it's about 700 is really, really tight capacity. And in 2021, Claiborne's at 690. So we asked Rocky to actually look at an area where there are no students living yet, Lakewood Trails, and see what would happen if we did a preemptive rezone and moved it to Henderson, where we have added on and given capacity of 900. And he ran those numbers for us. I just want to share this. We're not making any decisions tonight. This is just for your information in case we do need to pull the trigger and do this. I wanted to show you what it does. It keeps Claiborne at 638 in 2 years with these estimates, and puts Henderson pretty big, 826, but they still have capacity there. And then the following year, in 2022, we'd be able to open 2 new schools. So that would completely shuffle everything, and we'd look at some new numbers. So if we were to choose to do this, remember there's no students living there now, we'd kind of do a preemptive rezone down to Henderson and give us a little bit of wiggle room at Claiborne. So I just wanted to give that to you for information. I threw that at him right before Thanksgiving break, and he was able to turn around and get us that information. So at this point, if you have any questions for Rocky or I.
I hear none. Thank you very much. Appreciate all your hard work and trying to keep up with the growth. Moving on to item C is our master planning update. Ms. Morzak will continue on with a different team to join her.
Thank you. I'm actually going to kind of run through, and then if you guys have any questions, I'll invite these guys up to help me answer them if you have them. As we've celebrated several times tonight, the bond did pass. And so we are now looking at our future projects and kind of where we're going to start out and start knocking some things out. So I'm going to stay pretty high level with you today, but kind of walk through our current projects that are either in design or we're trying to get pricing so that we can figure out kind of what order to go in. The very first thing, probably one of the most important things, is safety and security. So we are looking at adding a protective film. It's a bullet-resistant film that would go on the exterior of all of our buildings that would keep people, make it very, very difficult to break that glass and get into the building. We're looking at doing that at all of our campuses in the front area. In addition, our elementary cameras are in need of some updates. So all of our elementary schools and our intermediate campuses will get new cameras. We're also looking at some exterior cameras. Forney High has a couple, North Forney has a couple that need to be replaced, and maybe a couple dead spots at our high schools just to make sure we're in good shape camera-wise. But really the focus is going to be elementary and intermediate. In addition, we're looking at the security of the perimeters at both of our high schools, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then trying to help some flow with parents at both middle schools, and we'll talk through that in a little bit as well. First one we're going to look at is Smith. And I think my road moved there, but well, I can't move it now. I don't know what happened. My road in Rocky's bars kind of went crazy on me today, but we are looking at, if you move that little yellow road down, we've kind of talked about this, creating a bus exit out the back of Smith onto Beefmaster. I think at this point we've determined that we own that frontage road and have the ability to go ahead and connect that road to give our buses better access out of the back of Smith and separate them from our parent traffic. Beefmaster's right here, this road. It's actually already in. All these roads are in. They're putting houses in now. So the bus loop would go out right here and connect at this intersection, and our buses would exit out to Falcon Way and turn right and be able to get out of the area. Warren and Brown. This is kind of what I was talking about. The back of Warren, if you've been there, we put in some wheel stops and changed the parent drop-off and pickup pattern to get some of the people off Bodark. It's worked very well. Over Christmas break, a canopy will be put in back there for the students to stand in inclement weather to kind of help facilitate that. We're looking at Brown, which is this top design, I think. Nope, that's still Warren. We're looking at Brown extending their front drive and making a right turn only out of the front of Brown to kind of help facilitate traffic through there, kind of straightening it out a little bit. Criswell, we kind of talked a little bit about this. We all know that there's a traffic nightmare right now at Criswell. And so to try and help that out, we're looking at adding a giant parent loop around the backside of Criswell to create some stacking space. Parent drop-off and pickup would be at the back. This is kind of the same design we have at the other campuses with a drop-off in the middle with a crosswalk. Students would enter the building and then exit back out with a right turn only. And then the buses would still continue to go in and exit the way they do now. But we really think this will help get some of that traffic off of the road and keep people from having problems at the light at Criswell. Claiborne is a pretty big project that we'll start this summer. It's time for floors. Claiborne's one of our older elementaries. It's the oldest of that footprint. So it's time for floors there. It's time for a fire panel, so they'll get a new fire panel. If you'll recall, we just replaced the roof last summer, so it's in good shape. And then we're actually going to look at giving them a little bit smaller version of what we have as our learning hub in the other campuses. So still give them a tree and a stage, turn this room into a dedicated art room, and give them a maker space and a reading area. They're not expanded, so they don't need a larger library like the expanded schools, but to give them the same basic feel and floor plan. So we're pretty excited about that. Forney High School, I talked a little bit about security. We are looking at figuring out a way to separate our parents, our students, and our buses at the high school. So securing that perimeter and making sure that we can keep our kids safe. In addition, you enjoyed some dinner tonight from our culinary arts students. We'd like to open that kitchen up to the public, and so it needs a little bit of love. The eating space needs to be renovated, so looking at a renovation there at Culinary Arts, maybe some signage on the front of the building. Welding and Fabrication Center. So you know welding is one of our largest programs. We fill it up, so it needs to be expanded a little bit. And so we're looking at doubling the size of our welding facility for welding and fabrication. That's a facility we're working with Eastfield on for their partnership so that they could actually use it in the evenings to teach classes there as well. And it'll be right next to the current welding facility at Forney High. And then they need a fire panel as well. So I'm at the wrong campus now. Is that North Forney who's getting the fire panel this summer? Forney High just got one. So I'm struggling a little bit, guys. So pretend like it says fire panel at North Forney. We are looking at the perimeter of North Forney, and I'll show you a little picture next, kind of what we're going to do there with an addition of a bus loop. And then the Animal Science Center, we're looking at expanding to increase the amount of goats, sheep, and pigs that can be there, and then moving doggy daycare out. So it's an entire Animal Science Center out there with a classroom. This is our bus barn over here, if you can kind of picture it. The buses would then pull in and come around, and we create this new bus loop for them to enter and exit, completely separating them from our parent and student traffic. So that would be additional pavement at North Forney to try and help with their perimeter. Citibank Stadium, as you know, we're in the process right now of replacing some of the seats out there. In addition, the turf and track is in dire need of some work. One of the curbs has fallen off at the track. So we're in the process now of picking someone for a turf and track replacement at Citibank Stadium. Here at the administration building, we're getting pretty tight on space, so we're looking at some ways to do just some small internal renovations to increase our capacity, but also to secure this building, so to give it actual secure vestibule so that people have to buzz in like they do at all the rest of our campuses, since we have students here now. We're also evaluating a new drive entrance off Center Street. If you try to leave here and turn left, it is a very, very dangerous endeavor. And so we are looking at seeing, it's on Bodart aligned to Center Street, so looking at trying helping that flow. New projects. New intermediate middle school. As you guys know, we purchased quite a bit of land over by Criswell, and we are looking at adding a middle school and intermediate school right here in this area. We're in the design phase of that now. It should open in the fall of 2021. And we just have a quick little picture here. Nothing's been named, so it's just very generic right now with Forney campus, but it's a very large piece of property that's going to have a lot of buildings on it eventually. So this is kind of the drive-in showing you what the schools are going to look like in the distance, and then eventually there will be a whole lot of other buildings in that area. So just kind of a generic picture. Dr. Terry stared me wrong on that one. In addition, we are starting our design on our new elementary prototype. So just like our triangle schools in Rain Smith, we'll design a prototype building that we can use multiple locations. And we will open 2 new elementary campuses in the fall of 2022. So I think that's it. I apologize for my couple little issues there. Anyone have any questions?
I hear no questions. Thank you for all of the updates on all the various projects that are going to be coming our way. I look forward to hearing more.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 6D, be our monthly financial reports. Mr. John Chase, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. The financial report for the month ending October 31st was included in your board book for review. Just the highlights of the report included the recognition of $17.1 million in revenue for the month. Expenditures was $9.8 million. Year-to-date revenue recognized was $30.5 million, or 28% of the amount estimated. And year-to-date expenditures was $33.8 million, or 33% of the amount appropriated. Moving on to the debt service account, for the month we collected just over $1 million in revenue. There were no expenditures. Year-to-date revenue was $1.4 million, or 6% of the amount estimated, and expenditures was $15.2 million, or 71% of the amount appropriated. In the background memo, I think you noticed that we're a little ahead of our revenue collections at this point, most of which I think last month I talked to you about the $6.5 million of state aid that was for the prior fiscal year in the general fund that we actually received and could not recognize it as revenue last year because of the timing that we received it. Same thing for the debt service account. If you'll notice up here in the state section here, it's $800,000. That's all revenue that we were actually entitled to from attendance and tax collections from the prior year. We didn't get it till after 60 days past the fiscal year end, so it's counted as revenue in this year. I think if you'll notice, there is no budget for state revenue in the debt service account, and I think probably because of the amount of the tax property values in the district are going to be such that we're not probably going to generate hardly any because our tax collections are going to be high enough to where, when they look at it on a per student basis, we're going to be wealthy enough to where we're collecting more than what they guarantee. So if we get any state aid this year for the current fiscal year based on attendance, it's not going to be a lot. So we may come back in and adjust that state budget, revenue budget item in a budget amendment in the future board meetings, but just to account for the revenue that was from the prior year. But that's pretty much the debt service and the general fund expense report for the month. And as far as cash and investments on hand at the end of October, for the general fund, food service, and debt service, capital project funds, we had $48.5 million. And that concludes the report. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I hear no questions. Moving on to item 6E, annual investment review. Mr. Chase?
Just a little background on the annual investment report. On a quarterly basis, you're familiar with that. We're getting those reports quarterly. The CDA local states that in addition to those quarterly investment reports, that we present a comprehensive report on investment program annually. And so that's what we're here to talk about tonight. As far as the goals, investment goals that's stated in our policy, number one is safety of principal. As you might imagine, because we're a public entity, we don't want to lose any money because we're taking on risky investments. And so, the legal policy that the state requires us to follow, the investments that are available to school districts or any governmental entity in the state are pretty safe in order to safeguard that principle that we would put out there for investments. The next on the list for our goals is maintain liquidity. Obviously, we want to be able to make sure that we can make our payroll and pay our bills and have access to the cash when those cash resources are needed. And then finally, yield is the third most important, and it's really in that order. We want to make sure we safeguard principal. We have plenty of liquidity sufficient to meet our cash flow needs, and then try to get as much yield as possible with those parameters, within those parameters. So as far as the strategies go in the funds, in the general fund, the agency fund, the state, we're not allowed to exceed 1 year on our investments. And, for the most part, that's all we do right now is investment pools, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But we can't exceed 1 year. Should we choose to invest in other things that are allowable in our policy? The stated maturities can't exceed 1 year for general fund or agency funds. So the policy does allow us to exceed maturities longer than 1 year in the debt service and capital project funds, assuming that we have sufficient liquidity to meet our obligations. And the authorized investments in our policy, obligations of or guaranteed by the governmental entities, and that's just a fancy way of saying we can invest in T-bills, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Federal Home Loan Bank stuff, that's backed by the U.S. government. We can invest in those types of investments. Certificates of deposits, collateralized repurchase agreements, commercial paper as long as it's rated A1, P1, and it doesn't exceed 270 days to maturity. No load mutual funds, guaranteed investment contracts, and then finally investment pools, which is where all of our resources are in currently. And so just to look at our activity in those pools, as you know, we have 3 investment pools that we participate in that you guys have approved by prior board action. That's Texas Class, Logic, and Tex Pool. And the annual interest rate that we earned from July 1 to June 30 of 2019, July 1 of 18 to June 30 of 19, in Texas Class was 2.46%, and Logic was 2.43%, and Tex Pool was 2.24%. And if you just look at some of the benchmark data, in that same time frame, the 3-month T-bill was 2.31, and the 6-month T-bill was 2.40. So in Texas Class and Logic, which the majority of our funds are invested, we beat both of those benchmarks. Now, Tex Pool, the reason why the yield there is a little lower than the others is that there is no commercial paper that's purchased with that pool. It's all agencies and treasuries, and so it's super, super conservative, and so the yield is adjusted accordingly. And finally, just the future investment plan. We'll continue to utilize the pools. I'm not sure, when we start getting into this capital project budget and we sell this first tranche of bonds, we may look at doing something different as far as, maybe looking at a financial advisor or investment company to help us maybe maximize those yields a little bit. I haven't really decided on that one yet. We are going to be limited to a certain extent on the amount of yield that we can keep on invested funds. The federal government will not let you keep more interest than what your bonds are paying bondholders. They call that arbitrage, and so we'll have to run calculations. I mean, there's a few exceptions to that rule, but moving forward, currently right now, that we're still going to continue using the investment pools. And so that's pretty much the annual report. You'll notice, I think, it coming down in the board agenda in consent. There's actually an item in there to approve a resolution stating that you guys have reviewed our local investment policy and you're approving it with no changes for the current year. That's an annual item that's required by the policy, and so that's something that's in that for you guys to approve whenever we get down to the consent agenda. But if there's any questions about the annual report, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't hear any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chase. We appreciate the annual review and being very thorough with that. Moving on to item 7, a public forum. As stated earlier, the board will hear comments from the audience only during the public comment portion of the meeting. Individuals wishing to speak must have added their name to the list prior to the meeting tonight, and we do have one that's signed up to address the board. If you'd like to make your way up here. As you're doing that, I'll read the statement that we need to share for instructions during this time. The board will allot 3 minutes from tonight's public comment portion of the meeting. Each speaker will be allowed to maximize a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board. Please respect the privacy of others and refrain from identifying students, employees, and other community members by name. The board requests that the comments on any subject, whether positive or negative, be courteous and respectful. Disruption of the meeting will not be tolerated at any time. Any speaker with a specific complaint about a district employee, decision, or operational issue should represent that complaint through the appropriate mechanism, which is the district's formal grievance process. Speakers provide detail with a specific complaint will be stopped and will be refrained and referred to the district administration for information about a grievance process. At this time, our speaker will be Samran Singh, and you may begin.
The first school dress code law was established in 1969 by Supreme Court. The case known as Tinker versus Des Moines Independent School District, which involved several high school students who wore black armbands to school in a planned protest against the Vietnam War. The court decided that schools may limit student expression if there is a legitimate concern that such expression disrupts the school environment. According to a dress code survey conducted at North Forney High School by a group of students, more than 80% of students agrees that dress code is extremely sexist. The dress code policy states that boys' hair should not extend more than shoulder, and boys are not allowed to grow facial hair. If students' hair length disrupts the learning environment, then teachers' hair length should also be qualified as a disruption to learning environment. The fact that schools are only allowed to ban things that actually disrupts the learning environment, then hair length is not a disruption to learning environment. There is no valid evidence that supports that student hair length is a disruption to learning environment. The real disruption is school itself. When they call out people to be dress coded, or teachers are assisted to dress code people, which takes off time from our class. I hope you all go over the dress code policy and address the necessary changes. At Forney ISD, dress code policy needs to be changed because it sounds really pathetic to have such a dress code policy in 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8, consent agenda. Under the consent agenda, we have 8A is minutes from November 11th meeting. 8B is approve the budget amendment. 8C is approve and adopt the 2021-2022 school calendar year as a final reading. 8D is approve request for maximum class size waiver exemptions. 8E is approve CW Local as a final reading. 8F, approve the resolution regarding review of local investment policy. The board may take action on these individually or collectively. Do I have a motion from the board?
Mr. Ferris, I make a motion to approve consent agenda items 8A through F collectively.
Mr. Carroll's made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Regan? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I hear none. Moving on to number 9. Item 9 is consideration and possible approval of an update 114 as a first reading. Our presenter tonight is Mr. Rick Gear, Chief of Human Services.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris and School Board. Our primary goal for this overview of Update 114 is to review the local policies in this update affected by the 86th legislative session and revised guidance offered by TEA and the State Board of Education. Under BDAF local, this policy change only applies to a few districts that had this local policy and their manual addressing the employment of tax officials. In this update, the statutory language related to that local policy was moved from BDAF legal to CCG legal. For most districts with this local policy as this code, this policy is recommended for deletion, which our district is. Senate Bill 494 changed the time required to post notice of an emergency meeting from 2 hours to 1 hour prior to the meeting. The district's BE local has been revised to reflect this change. The same bill also clarified what constitutes an emergency or urgent public necessity that would permit the board to call an emergency meeting. Upon further reflection, the TASB recommendation had listed on the policy of a 6:30 start time also. We're going to strike that, and so we'll have that corrected for the next final and hopefully the final reading. You're likely to be familiar with House Bill 2840. This bill requires the school board to permit public comment on posted agenda items at all school board meetings. This includes regular meetings, special meetings, or board workshops. To comply with the new law, revisions have been made to BED local. The recommended policy requires that public comment on an agenda item occur before the board consideration of the item. The other recommended revisions clarify that public comment is permitted at regular meetings on any topic, whether it is posted on the agenda or not. While at special meetings, public comment is only permitted on topics listed on the agenda. Recommended for removal from the policy is the overall time limit for public comment and the provision requiring delegations of 5 or more to appoint a spokesperson. A new section has been added to this policy that also permits the presiding officer to make adjustments to the procedures when a large number of individuals wish to address the board. This is intended to allow for efficient management of the board meeting. Districts with a CCGB local regarding the Texas Economic Development Act, you'll find a more streamlined photo in this update. Streamlined policy in this update. The revised policy includes those key provisions that should be reflected in our local policy. House Bill 2706 now permits districts to invest bond proceeds or pledge revenue. However, the law prohibits the district from investing bond proceeds in no-load mutual funds. CDA local has been revised to include bond proceeds and pledged revenue as permissible investment instruments to the extent permitted by law. The other revision in this policy renames agency funds to custodial funds in response to changes in guidance from the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, also known as GASB. A small but significant change is recommended to CH local. A new provision has been added to assign to the superintendent the responsibility to develop purchasing procedures to implement requirements of state and federal laws. CKC Local has been revised in response to bills related to the district's emergency operations plan. House Bill 2195 now requires the plan to include procedures for responding to an active shooter emergency. To comply with Senate Bill 11, the policy now requires the plan to include procedures that ensure a substitute teacher has access to campus buildings and materials necessary to carry out duties during an emergency or an emergency drill. CKE Local has been revised to incorporate two requirements from Senate Bill 1707. First, the bill prohibits district police officers or school resource officers, also known as SROs, from being assigned routine discipline or school administrative tasks. This policy has been updated to reflect this prohibition. The bill also requires the board to determine the law enforcement duties of the district's police officers and any SROs, and to include these duties in the district improvement plan, our student code of conduct, and other relevant district publications. Duties of an SRO would also be included in the memorandum of understanding that the district has with the law enforcement agency providing the SROs. CQB Local is a new policy code that includes recommended language for a cybersecurity policy as required by Senate Bill 820. The new policy addresses the cybersecurity plan as well as the cybersecurity training of employees and board members required by House Bill 3834. This new code is also where provisions on security breaches can now be found. The security breach provisions have been moved here from policy CQ and have been revised to address when the district must report security breaches to TEA in accordance with Senate Bill 820. House Bill 3 moved provisions on reduction of funding from Education Code Chapter 42 to Chapter 48. Since the cross-referencing regarding furloughs provides sufficient guidance to the relevant legal authority, the citation to the Education Code has been removed from the policy. House Bill 1143 prohibits a district from regulating the manner in which a handgun, a firearm, or ammunition is stored in a locked vehicle in a district parking area, provided the item is not in plain view. DH Local, the policy related to employees, and GKA Local, the policy that applies to visitors, reflect this new law by removing language requiring firearms in locked vehicles to be unloaded. The changes in EHBB Local result from House Bill 3 and the newly adopted Texas State Plan for the Education of Gifted, Talented Students. The policy now includes required provisions regarding the use of GT funds and annual compliance certification to the commissioner that the district's GT program is consistent with the GT state plan. The text regarding the Gifted and Talented Selection Committee has been broadened since there is no longer a requirement to specify if the committee is established at the campus or at the district level. The language regarding reassessments and transfer students is now more flexible. Lastly, references to nominating students for the program are deleted throughout this policy. TEA's recent revisions to the Unsafe School Choice Option Guidance Handbook prompted changes to FDE Local. The list of violent criminal offenses for which a victim is eligible for transfer to another school within the district has been updated to reflect these changes. The UIL has added a rule that requires students who participate in marching band to receive a pre-participation physical in accordance with the UIL established schedule. FFAA Local has been revised to broaden the policy language to accommodate future changes to UIL rules on physicals and to allow the superintendent to designate other extracurricular programs for which the district will require physicals. Senate Bill 11 requires that districts establish threat assessment and safe and supportive school teams to serve campuses. FFB Local has been developed to address the policy requirements imposed by this bill. The district's policies and procedures must be consistent with the model policies and procedures developed by the Texas School Safety Center. TASB collaborated with the Texas School Safety Center to develop this recommended policy. FFBA Local is another new policy which addresses trauma-informed care. The policy addresses the requirements included in Senate Bill 11. The details of the district's trauma-informed care program must be included in the district improvement plan. The policy makes reference to the elements required in the district's program, including increasing staff and parent awareness of trauma-informed care, required training, and available counseling options for students affected by trauma or grief. The policy also affirms that the district shall report training compliance to TEA. FL Local has been revised to assist with the implementation of the district's safe and supportive school program as required by Senate Bill 11. The provision that access by school officials clarifies that a person appointed to a team that supports the safe and supportive school program may access student records if the person has legitimate educational interest in the records. Finally, everybody breathing. Finally, Senate Bill 494 permits the board in districts impacted by catastrophe to temporarily suspend the Public Information Act, or PIA. GBAA Local includes new recommended provisions to delegate to the superintendent the authority to approve the initial suspension period of up to 7 consecutive days and to provide all required notices. For an extension beyond that 7-day period, the law requires the board to determine whether the district is still impacted by the catastrophe. Thus, the policy requires the board to approve such an extension. Well, this was probably one of the more lengthy updates that we've had since my tenure. So, but if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to entertain those.
I had one question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gear, going back to FFB and FFBA locals, both of those are response to crisis. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The FFB deals with our threat assessment team and the provisions that is put in place. And as they refer to the Texas School Safety Center and TASB, they obviously collaborated on this to create a system that was kind of consistent across the state. As you may well remember, that last year we started working on our threat assessment that is in alignment with this. And actually the model that we adopted even prior to the new legislative changes was actually kind of one of the forefronts that TEA and TASB were looking at as far as creating this model. So we feel very fortunate that we got a little bit ahead of the game on that one. Now the trauma-informed care, we have it's called Stop the Bleed program is one of the things that's approved by the state, and we're in the process of implementing that and getting our staff trained. Yes, sir. That help answer your question?
It did, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gear, can you clarify, what was the one after BED local?
I'm sorry, Mr. Ferris.
After, what followed BED local?
It's CCGB.
Okay. And then at the end, is there supposed to be a GKA local?
Yes, sir. That was not part of our local policy. It was removed. GKA is included, I'm sorry. Yes, GKA is included with DH local. Let me show you, let's go back to that slide.
Okay.
Because I'm sorry, one wasn't good.
Yeah, there it is.
DH local deals with personnel employees,
Okay.
where GKA local will deal with just the
Thank you.
community. Public. Same provisions, yes, sir.
Any other questions from the board? Dr. Terry, do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, this is just honestly the first of what we hear of about 10 years of unfolding of House Bill 3. And so I just appreciate Rick doing a lot of research and work on this, and Haley, our attorney, working with us to clarify a lot of this. This is a first reading. Obviously, if you have any feedback on any of the policies, we've already found one edit in the mounds of paper that we've got to go back and make before final. So this is the first reading, but any feedback that you have tonight, we'll be happy to take and explore.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, Ms. Tier, would you please move this forward to the consent agenda at our next regular board meeting? Thank you. Moving on to item 10. Item 10 is consideration of possible approval of a resolution relating to establishing the Forney Independent School District's intention to reimburse itself for the prior lawful expenditures of funds relating to construction and equipping various school district improvements from the proceeds of one or more series of tax-exempt obligations to be issued by the district for authorized purposes, authorizing other matters incident and related thereto, and providing an effective date. Mr. John Chase will be our presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. In your background information in your board book, there were several projects listed there with costs associated with those projects. Ms. Morsack in her presentation tonight hit on most of the ones that are included there. And just after we took a look at several of the projects in the district and prioritized them for completion for the year, these projects kind of rose to the top of our list. And we believe the best way to finance these projects will be through a maintenance tax note that will be repaid out of our general operating fund over the next 10 years. Since it's possible that we might have incur expenditures to start these projects off before we actually get the proceeds delivered, should you choose to move forward with this resolution. What we're asking to do is to express your intention to reimburse ourselves for costs that we might incur prior to issuing those tax notes. So our goal, or at least our plan is to come back to you in January and bring to you the actual details of the tax note sale. So hopefully we'll have everything together and the deal basically finalized, assuming you guys approve the deal at that time in the January meeting. But ahead of that, if we incur any cost between then and the time we get those sold, we might not be able to sell them until sometime soon after the board meeting. I assume if you guys give us their approval. If we incur any costs, this will just give us the ability to reimburse ourselves for those costs. And so our administration is recommending that you approve this resolution of intent to reimburse ourselves for various school project improvements as listed in the board memo. So if you have any questions, that's our recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. And Dr. Terry, what is your recommendation?
I recommend that we approve this resolution as presented. This just provides us a little bit of flexibility and allows Vaughn and his team to begin moving forward with a few of our projects.
Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Ferris?
Yes, sir.
Just a couple. Is this resolution just tied to the projects that are listed, or is it open for this concept for other projects as well?
Those are the projects that we're including in that tax note. Now, we'll be presenting that list to the Attorney General's office because that's what we have to do in order to get their approval to issue these notes. At the end of the projects, if there's any proceeds left, I think there's a few things that you can do with it. One of which is you can deposit the excess proceeds into or use those to pay off bond, those tax notes, I guess, early. If it's structured that way. I'm not sure exactly what the other things that we can do with that money. I think it's going to be limited to kind of what we lay out in the AG's that we give to them as our intent, what we intend to use those funds for. But there may be some ability to use some additional proceeds at the end of that. It depends on how generic I guess we give that list to the AG's office, but for now, that's what we're planning to use those proceeds for.
Mr. Carroll, if I can kind of help clarify a little bit too, is what you see on that list, there's an overage of projects for what we have budgeted for that $6.5 million that we've discussed. And so we'll have plenty of projects to utilize the maintenance tax note for. Some of those may have been budgeted already within a possible bond sale in the future, and therefore other projects may be able to be folded into that bond sale in the future to kind of replace. So it's kind of using two pots to accomplish some of our goals, if that helps.
You're going to submit this list to the Attorney General's office. Do we have the flexibility if another need arises, or do we have to come back with another resolution to change the use of this 6.5?
I think right now what's listed in there is what we're going to what we're saying we're going to use the money for. Now, I think what Dr. Terry is saying is that, within our capital improvement budget, there's money available there to do other things, other additions and things like that, that we might possibly be able to accomplish with those proceeds, if I understand what he's telling you correctly. But we have to be somewhat specific with what we're intending these tax notes to be used for. Okay. And so that's the project list that we're recommending funding with the general fund proceeds, and there may be other projects that we can use capital project funds for.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ferris,
Yes, ma'am.
tell me if I'm out of order. I meant to ask on the last one and didn't, about the time it takes, how long turf should last before we have to replace it? Because it seemed like we'd replaced it fairly recently.
We did a turf project in the green room or indoor facility at Forney High School a year and a half or so ago. The outdoor field has not been done for at least, it's been over 10 years, and generally the useful life on the turf fields is somewhere around 8 to 10. If you can get 10 out of them, you're doing really, really good. And it's past 10 years now.
Thank you.
Any other questions? May I have a motion from the board?
Ferris, I move that we approve the resolution as presented.
Mr. Johnson, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Regan? I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I hear none. Moving on then to item 11, consideration and possible approval of an amendment to the current construction management agreement to include certain minor projects at a reduced rate and authorize the superintendent to negotiate and sign the amendment. Ms. Kim Warsack, I'll turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. As you know, we have had a long-standing relationship with Gallagher Construction, and I've been working with Vaughn on all of our building projects, and just really have enjoyed what he and his team have done for us. This is kind of a different one for me. Vaughn actually came to Dr. Terry and said, I think we need to revise the AIA because I think I'm getting paid too much. And that just doesn't happen. That's the kind of guy he is. And so we're looking at revising the AIA because we've asked him to start stepping in and helping us with some smaller projects than normal. And the original agreement had us about at 7% because it was a range. And so he's proposing that be lowered to 4%. And that's really for projects where he doesn't have to have the manpower that he would at large ones, somebody there constantly. So he's really just a good guy. I don't know what else to say about him. So we are asking that you approve this amendment of our current AIA agreement with Gallagher Construction.
Thank you, Ms. Morzak. Dr. Terry, what is your recommendation?
Yeah, again, I just kind of reiterate what Kim said is it's not very often you get a group that comes to you and points something out that even through some of these smaller projects that we're able to save a little bit of money for the school district, that'll help us to do even more projects. And so we appreciate Gallagher Construction and their team and the partnership that we've had for a long time now here in Forney. And I don't know that there's any other recommendation I could make then to approve us saving money. So I'm going to go ahead and say that we need to approve this, the amendment, and allow me to negotiate that with Vaughn.
Thank you, Dr. Terry. Any questions from the board? I know you're all in awe of this. That's what it is, right? Take your breath away. May I have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the amendment to include certain minor projects at a reduced rate and authorize the superintendent to negotiate and sign the amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I hear none. Thank you very much. At this time, we'll move on to item 12, which is closed session. It is now 8:28 p.m., and we will convene into closed session at this time under Texas Government Code Section 551074, 551071, 551076, 551129. No voting will take place in the closed session. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of the discussions in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes back into open session. Thank you.